So let it be written. So let it be done.
That's just an Easter egg for our YouTube listeners.
Ben, I don't know what's wrong with your brain, but it should be studied.
I mean, another Easter egg for our YouTube listeners. If you can read the screen, it's the fact that I'm drinking that. I think that has me messed up.
It's a
Anyway,
crime.
it is a crime. It's not alcohol
this
either.
is season 8, episode 11, I think, of cross-checking. You've stumbled across it. If you're returning to our podcast, welcome back. Still can't believe that people listen to more than one of these things.
We're happy
and if
that you
are
do. We're happy that you do.
We are happy. We're thrilled, in fact.
Just for reference.
Just surprised.
Yeah.
And if this is your first episode, welcome to the party. This is a podcast where we do our best to, in a casual and sometimes lackadaisical manner, we're hoping to bring people closer to a good understanding of who God is and who He calls His people, that is us, to be. And this season we've been going through Lutheran identity, and if there are a lot of reasons that it's a conversation that many more people than just us are contributing to right now. And if you want to hear kind of why and our rationale for doing a season on it, you can go back and listen to episode 1 of this season. But we're here. We're as ready as we ever are. And I'm one of your hosts, Josh Laborious. I'm a pastor out in Friendswood, Texas, a little bit southeast of Houston. And with me, as always, is the bearded one, Benjamin Olschlager, whose name has too many vowels in it.
It does. It does have very many vowels in it. Today, Josh,
his jersey has less
than the required number of vowels in it. That's true. That's
I was
true.
trying to correct the cosmic injustice.
Something like that.
So what are we talking about today, Ben?
So
now that I'm done judging the spelling of your name.
Today we're going to talk about the thing that I think most people would actually assume is the first thing you talk about when you talk about Lutheran identity. But we started with Jesus because we're right.
Well, and I was thinking about that. Go ahead, but I have a... We didn't do it, but it would have been a good reason for us to do it this way.
So when I start to think about what it means to be Lutheran, sure, you follow the teachings of Martin Luther, but only mostly.
And only some of them.
And only some. Like, the dude had some senile moments. His teaching transformed over the years. Like, what we follow is the movement that he started, which was, let's get back to the heart of Scripture. Let's not jettison, the history and the tradition that the church has passed down to us that we know is good. But let's make sure that we're keeping things in the right order, that our focus is on Christ, that we're living in the shadow of the cross, and seeking our grace and forgiveness and everything through that rather than through, man-made traditions or anything like that. And in order to kind of help us with that, early Lutheran theologians, Luther himself included, wrote a number of documents. Things like the Augsburg Confession, the Smalcald Articles, Luther's Small and Large Catechism, the Apology to the Augsburg Confession, what am I missing? The Formula of Concord, the Treatise on the Power and Primacy of the Pope. Am I missing anything else?
I honestly wasn't keeping track of what you said, so...
I think that's everything. I might be blanking on something.
You definitely got the big ones.
I got the big ones.
You said the Large and Small Catechisms of Martin Luther, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Okay. We got the AC, the Apology, the Small and Large Catechisms, Smalcald, the Formula of Concord, both the Solid Declaration and the Epitome, and the Treatise on the Power and Primacy of the Pope, which is really just a an appendix to the Formula of Concord that says Pope bad, but we count it as its own thing anyway. Pope bad. Not the Pope himself.
Much disapprove.
But the
Pope
idea
bad.
of a Pope bad. These documents were meant to give Lutherans some guide rails, or as our professors at the seminaries like to say, either guardrails or ditches, depending on which professor you were talking about, as you are walking down the road that is Christian faith. And for a lot of people, when they think of Lutheranism, they think of, man, those are the guys with a bunch of books that tell them what they're supposed to think. And they're not wrong. It's a big part of our identity.
A little bit of... Here is how, if you come to me and you are not familiar at all with what the Book of Concord is, and you might be listening to this and you're like, I'm in that category, which is fine.
By the way,
we do have a season about the Book of Concord that you are welcome to listen to.
It's also different than the Formula of Concord. We're just really bad at naming things.
Yes.
That's why all of our colleges are called Concordia.
We're not bad. We're just boring. In which...
that's
side
true.
Note on that,
that's why every Lutheran church is either named after Jesus or one of the gospel writers, or Luther. We have a very, very rare St. Augustine Lutheran Church here in Michigan.
I'm at Hope Lutheran Church, which is none of those things you just listed.
It's named after Jesus. Who is our hope, Josh?
Okay.
Who is our hope, Josh?
That's... Okay. Anyway, you can check our season on the Book of Concord if you want to know more about that. But kind of in a nutshell, what it is it takes the Bible and it looks at the whole thing and says, what are the most important parts to know? And not just in like, well, know this verse and know this verse. It's like when you look at the whole thing and you are taking the Bible holistically, here's the spark notes of what you need to know. Which I don't know, it might be longer than the Bible actually, so maybe spark notes isn't the best way to put it, but it's like, I mean, just running through the Augsburg Confession, it says, here's who we believe God is. Here is our problem, original sin. Here's our solution to that problem, the Son of God. It talks about justification. And it goes through, here are the things you need to know about Christianity. And a couple of guys got together, smart guys, they thought through it. They said, here's what we can say with confidence. Let's put it together in a book. And that's what we hold to. And Ben mentioned earlier, kind of as like Lutherans, the book tells us what to think. And it's like about the important stuff that we have figured out. Yes. It says this is what it is right. This is what a right understanding of God is, of the sacraments is, whatever. I don't think, and I'm going to push back a little bit on something you said, because you said that you might think that this would be the first episode we would do. I think that is what a Lutheran pastor would think.
That's fair. That's honestly fair.
Because,
or if you're too
online, you might be listening to this and you're like, that is not the first thing I think about Lutherans. In fact, if this is your first episode and you've not been to either of our churches, you might be like, I don't think about Lutherans a whole lot, actually. I know they exist. I've seen the name on a building, I guess. But here's the thing. I do think being confessional, and by that we mean being in alignment with the Lutheran confessions, is a critical piece of the Lutheran identity. But it is one that is, in some circles, very much taken for granted. It's one that kind of goes under the radar, and it's one that is more in the awareness of pastors like Ben and myself than it might be of the average Lutheran Christian. Because it's like, we don't read from the Book of Concord typically on a Sunday morning. You might have a study on it in church, but you like if I walk into a Lutheran church and there's not a ongoing study on the Book of Concord, that does not shock me, and nor am I upset or offended by that. It is a excellent resource, but a lot of times it gets into the weeds more than the average Christian really needs. And like that's why we teach confirmation out of the catechism instead of the Book of Concord. Because the catechism even takes the Book of Concord and distills it and says, okay, but if you're only going to know like 6 things from this, here are the 6 things that every Christian should know. So I think,
and honestly, if you know those 6 things, you will distill the rest of it.
Yeah, the rest of it is, not to sound insulting or dismissive, but the rest of it is derivative of what we call the 6 chief parts of faith. And it is further explanation of the 6 chief parts of faith.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm not pretending we had some grand strategy. We made a list of topics and we've just been picking whatever one we feel like. But I think if we were to be strategic about the order we did this season in, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Book of Concord to go later in that list, because for a lot of folks and for you listening, the first thing you think about your church or the Lutheran church is probably not, oh, they're in conformity with the Book of Concord. We have the other one, historic. You might look at Lutheran, like that's something you can kind of look from the outside and you can say, yeah, I can see how they're historic. Just based on some of the practices. If you listen to any Lutheran preacher, you're going to get the Christ alone, Scripture alone, grace alone, faith alone. If you talk with any, not any Lutheran, but if you talk with most any Lutheran at any point, you're going to be like, wow, these guys are nerds. Facial hair. You look at the congregation, you're like, huh.
You look at the guys hosting this podcast.
The beer thing, you're going to see that.
It's
the weird relationship with politics, which we did last week, is maybe the least obvious because the relationship is weird and sometimes it's kind of on the DL, right? So it makes sense to me that we would address these things that are maybe more visible signs of what does it mean to be Lutheran, even though underneath all of them is this confessional identity. Because if you were to ask Ben, or I guess I speak for Ben, so I hope you agree with me on this.
I'll let you know
if you're going to ask us at what point do you stop being Lutheran? It is if you are no longer teaching in conformity with the confessions. Because you can be Christian and not Lutheran, and the distinction between those two is if you're teaching in accordance with our confessions, you are Lutheran because you're teaching Lutheran theology. And if you're not teaching Lutheran theology, that's where we, as Lutheran pastors, we would say, and this, our synod agrees with us on this, that's when we say you're not Lutheran if you're not teaching Lutheran theology. All this other stuff you can have no appreciation for history and still be a Lutheran church. You can have no nerds in the congregation. Everybody can be clean shaven. You can not have any alcohol on campus. All of these things you can do and not be Lutheran. Or all of these things you cannot do and still be Lutheran as long as your theology is still in the right place. So this is very much an undercurrent in how we classify things. And for anyone who's keeping track, if you also want to know what's the line where you're not Christian anymore, confessing Christ crucified, confessing Christ as Lord and that God raised him from the dead. That's the line for Christianity, I think. There's probably some additional nuance that deserves, but
yeah. And I mean, I don't know how to put this, but I'm going to check this out there and see if this lands like a hand grenade or a pillow.
That's my favorite thing to land near me.
So what Josh is saying in a nutshell is there are people who call themselves Lutheran that we don't think are Lutheran. And that's true. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America had their national convention this year, and as they always do, did some absolutely bonkers things that made everybody in the LCMS, Josh and I's denomination, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, go can you guys just please,
Your name, rebrand.
for the love of all that is holy and good, and especially Lutheran, stop calling yourselves Lutheran. Please.
Yeah. We should just
on the bright side,
suggest some out-of-pocket name for them, and they'd probably adopt it. Like the. Never mind. I was about to say something insulting, and I shouldn't do that. We can move on.
Good restraint, Josh. On the bright side, though, because they have lost any sort of Christian identity, it won't be long before everybody kind of recognizes that, and that church body ceases to exist. There are good Lutherans and good Christians in the ELCA. They are just harder and harder and harder to find.
Yeah, and it's not because they're becoming it's not because there are a bunch of people who are becoming non-Christians or bad Christians. It's because they're leaving. It's because the good faithful Christians are one by one meeting their point where they're like, this is too far.
Yeah.
So, but confessional is we're here to talk about what we are, not what we're not.
Yeah. Oh, a note on that though. The thing that makes
there's a section in there that's what we're not. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. A note on that though that like kind of helps define why things have gotten so crazy to do with confessions between more conservative denominations like the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is how we treat our confessions. So in the ELCA, they like their pastors and leadership in churches have to say, we will uphold the confessions, Latin word, but it translates to insofar as we agree with them, basically. And insofar as hypothetically supposed to be, we believe that they agree with Scripture. Which I think is a fair-ish place to start, but the way that it's been used is like, oh, we're just going to chop things up and toss away the stuff we don't like, and the only thing that makes us Lutheran is the fact that we believe in the real presence. And we really, really, really like this grace concept. They don't
Which are
get
two
it.
Good things.
Yes. But they don't get it either. So that's its own thing. And then within the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, we uphold the confessions because we believe that they are faithful to the theology we see in Scripture, to the understanding of God that we see in Scripture. And so that's why we use them. It's not because, like, we think that they are themselves a holy book. We just think that they're a good, like, boiled down outline of the theology you see in Scripture. And it can be a helpful set of guideposts as you study the Bible, as you think about the way that theology applies to life and all these other things. Yeah. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. And so what does this practically look like might be a question that you're asking yourself. And if not, I have just asked it for you. So you're welcome.
I mean, the first thing it means is when you build your church, they're probably going to put UAC on their cornerstone because they're nerds.
We would never.
That, by the way, stands for the Unaltered Augsburg Confession.
Augsburg Confession.
Because some people tried to rewrite it so that it sounded more okay to people who didn't actually agree with it, and then it caused other problems.
We were like, nah.
Yeah. We're going to be picky.
Practically, like if you are the average Lutheran in the pew, your interaction with Lutheran as confessional is largely you are a recipient of it. You don't, and I don't mean to say this in any sort of way that would diminish the work of lay people in the church. But what I'm going to say is you are receiving more often than you're contributing to the confessional identity.
Mm-hmm.
In that this comes into play when you are calling a pastor or another church worker, so DCE, Lutheran school teacher, whatever, because they have made a commitment to uphold the teachings of the confession. It's a vow. Pastors, we make it at our ordination. Called workers make it at the beginning of their ministry as well. And then also whenever you're installed, you repeat that promise to uphold the teachings of the Book of Concord.
And if you didn't know that, and like that's news to you today, but you've been in a Lutheran church for a hot minute and you haven't found anything you disagree with, then you're fine with this.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say. It's going to come out in how your pastor and your other called workers teach and preach.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to come out and say this is confessional, but all of my sermons, as far as I am able, are confessional sermons. They're guided and normed by first and foremost scripture and then what we believe as Lutheran Christians. The same goes for teaching. Now, some other places you might interact with, like I mentioned earlier, your church might occasionally have a Bible study series on the Book of Concord, and that's great, and it lets you dive deeper in. And then where you maybe as a layperson would start to interact with scripture or with the Book of Concord more is if you are then in a teaching role. Your resources are hopefully going to be either themselves correct and in alignment with the Book of Concord, or you or your pastor are going to kind of walk through and say, well, this resource is good, but around this part, we're going to kind of put some asterisks on this. So, for example, maybe you got a book that's from a Baptist publisher or something like that. It probably is going to have a little bit of a different perspective on what baptism means and what that looks like. So you still use the resource, but when it comes to the part on baptism, you as a teacher of that class or as a leader of that class, you might say, well, we don't quite agree with this. And that would be where you're kind of contributing to the confessional identity of the church. But by and large, it's what you are receiving because it's what is the church teaching and preaching. And in that way, it's not an explicitly visible part of Lutheran identity, even though it is critical to Lutheran identity.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a foreign concept. I think there are a lot of parts of like our individual lives where we have parts of our identity that are underlying almost everything we do, but they're not necessarily explicitly visible. So an example, like pick your character trait. Say you're stubbornly loyal. You probably don't. It doesn't say that on your business card. But if you look at anything you do, it's going to be touched by that stubborn loyalty. I mean, and that's kind of how the confessional identity is the character of the Lutheran Church. That doesn't necessarily mean we always are like saying it, although we say it more than you probably say I'm stubbornly loyal if you are. But
I mean, you get kind of the same thing in education, though, too. Like, there are different philosophies that work for different students on the way that education works. So, like, you could prefer a more independent study model. You could prefer more Montessori. You could prefer, like, a traditional classroom. You could prefer classical education. Like, there are a bunch of different things. And, like, if you're just talking to somebody...
it's going to obviously impact your education in visible ways.
Yeah. And
without necessarily saying it.
Exactly.
You're talking about it from students. The same goes for teachers.
Yeah.
Like teachers tend to have their favorite philosophy and approach to education.
Exactly.
They might not lead with it though. They're just going to do it.
Throw in like flipped classrooms and like there are so many different ways that you can skin a cat. And the way that you particularly choose to do it, people don't see it until they see you do it. And then they're going to tell you whether they agree with you or not. I'm not saying you should go skin a cat, by the way.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's illegal in most places.
Even if it's not illegal, kind of gross.
I mean, okay, so if the cats,
You are not about to defend cat skinning on
yes, I
this
am.
podcast, Benjamin. Someone take
There
points
are-
away from him.
there
I
are-
was docked last time. I took points away from him, so someone else has to do it. But take some points away from Ben because he's about to defend cat skinning.
No, here's the thing. There are places in this country where cats have gone feral and they have disrupted local ecosystems. And in those cases, there are shoot-on-sight orders.
Shooting a cat is very different from skinning a cat.
You might as well make good use of it.
What are you doing with cat skin, you psychopath?
Nothing, actually. But
Someone needs to check on mittens in Ben's neighborhood because
actually,
obviously that cat is
there are
in
a lot of
danger.
feral cats in our neighborhood, and I don't mind them here because we have bad problems with rabbits. So I'll take the feral cats we've got. No, but like as we think about confessional identity and what it means for lay people, I think one of the other things that we have to factor in here is that whether or not you've read the Book of Concord or any of its parts, I think with the exception of the small catechism, which I would say the majority of Lutherans have at least been exposed to in their life.
At very least, you will have been exposed to the concepts therein.
Yes. Yeah. Like most new member classes walk through bits and pieces of the small catechism, even if you don't read through the thing. Any kid that goes through confirmation is going to read parts of the small catechism, if not the whole thing. Honestly, it's only like 20 pages. So if you haven't read it in a while, you can get a copy for like $2, or there's free versions on the internet if you don't want to get a physical copy. Read through it. The basics are there. You'll know them as soon as you hear them and see them. But like whether or not that is at all familiar to you, if you are paying any attention to a sermon during church at a Lutheran church, you're going to be applying some of the standards and theology of the Augsburg Confession and the other books of the Book of Concord, just because you're doing what is being taught. Like you're applying this confessional identity to your life, whether or not you like fully understand it or know it. And that's not a bad thing. Like,
In fact, we would say it's a good thing.
Yeah. Like, we're not trying to subversively do anything here. It's more like when you're parenting, like your kids don't get the full picture, but when you tell them don't touch the hot stove, like you understand that means if they touch the hot stove, their hand is going to get burned. There's a decent chance they end up with a little trip to the hospital for some burn cream and to make sure that it's like not singeing off any muscles or nerves or anything. But like all a kid knows is, hey, there's a boundary that I'm not supposed to cross. Which, I don't know, for Josh and I, that's like blinking red light telling us to do it. Just saying. But like,
yeah, that there's definitely a little bit of that.
But that like,
don't be like us, kids, or you'll end up like us. And
honestly, if they end up like us, there's worse final destinations.
I guess I can give us that much credit.
Yeah. But all of that is to say, like, we trust Josh. I don't know about you, but when I go to the doctor, or I had an appointment yesterday to make sure that, like, something that my dentist found was not anything worse than what he assumed it to be, which was just normal weird growth in my mouth. It's fine, just like a sore, basically.
Ben is just wild today, guys.
Yeah.
He's skinning cats and telling us the details of his oral health.
Yeah.
I know a guy who can pull the tooth for you.
It's not a tooth.
Knowing him,
it's
probably
gums.
happily.
It's gums.
Well, he'll pull your whole face off if you ask him
Caleb.
nicely enough. I don't think he listens to the podcast.
You should send him just this episode.
Just listen to around minute 29.
Whatever. Yeah, but like, I trust my doctors, my dentists, when they tell me, "Hey, this is something we think is worth looking at." I'm not an expert on dental health. I'm not an expert on my physical health beyond like.
I know you're not an expert on dental health. I can smell your breath from here.
No, that's just the soda. Sorry.
Full circle. We're masters. We're masters of this.
Yeah. Like, on some level, you have to trust the people that know more than you do. And all we're asking as pastors is that as long as you keep hearing faithful scriptural teaching from us, assume for what you hear from us like what you hear from your doctor, that we have your best interest in mind and we're trying to help you be healthy in your faith in the same way your doctor is trying to help you be healthy in your physical life. And the confessions help us do that, just like a rigorous education and medical accreditation do for a doctor.
Yeah.
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 Our textbook just doesn't have nearly as many pictures and diagrams.
No. And there are a couple of places where I think it does reference science that is not correct.
Oh,
when we like commit ourselves to the confession, that is like the one asterisk of like when they use a scientific example, we can ignore that part.
Yeah. My favorite.
And it's never like it's never a truth. They're trying to use something to illustrate a point, and it's just
Yeah.
It no longer is a helpful illustration.
My favorite. Do you know the term miasma?
Yeah, from video games.
Okay. Do
I
you know
don't know
what it
if
means?
it's applied like poison gas.
Close. So back in the day, it was believed that rather than, before germ theory, it was believed that people got sick from bad air. And this theory's been around forever. So like,
Which even after germ theory is not entirely wrong. We just know what makes the air bad.
Exactly. But like they would believe like you would get like syphilis from bad air. If you know what syphilis is, you do not get it from bad air.
You don't get it from bad air.
Um,
I don't know, honey. I just walked through this alley and it smelled kind of bad, and
now I have
here
syphilis. Oh, darn.
Yikes.
Anyway, Luther references that in his discussion of I think it's the fourth or fifth petition. Give us this day our daily bread, and he's like, "Yeah, God gives us good, clean air," and I'm like,
which is
it's true,
but it means a different thing than he thought it meant.
Exactly. So I thought about writing a paper on how like Luther was like centuries ahead of his time, and he just didn't know it. But decided against it because I had better things to do with my time.
Guys, it's also because Ben knows like 4 words in English.
I mean,
he can only spell 3 of them. For anyone who is a new listener, Ben is actually fairly intelligent, but the more intelligent he is, the more I'm going to make fun of him for being dumb. So
yeah. I think Josh and
we'll pretend it's a compliment.
Josh and I have relatively competitive nerd credentials.
That really depends on how you define nerd, because you are a lot more familiar with nerdy things than I am. And I will concede that point.
Yeah, I guess you're a stronger geek than a nerd.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with that.
So defining terms here, because this is good. By the way, this is part of confessional identity, is that we define our terms and we try to hold to those definitions. So
very carefully.
Yes. So that when we're talking to each other as Lutherans, we can actually like have a conversation
where we
understand
words in the
each other.
Same way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like how in the South, Coke means any soda brand, because
it does. Well, and just
insane.
Kind of a note for you guys listening. This is one of the reasons, on a surface level, Lutherans and some other denominations might not have any differences. And you might be like, well, you guys are saying the same thing. And then the Lutheran is going to hold up their finger like a nerd, because we are, and say, well, we're not saying the same thing because we're using that word, actually. They mean something different when they are saying. Or we could just as easily say we mean something different when we're using this word.
Yeah. 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 I was going to say, in the North, when we say the word Coke and somebody says, no, we only have Pepsi, you get really disappointed. Like, they're not the same thing. And when you're in Los Angeles and somebody says, do you want some Coke? That's a very, very different product.
That means two things.
It does.
And if you don't know what both things are, that's okay. You can ask your parents when you're older.
Ian?
Oh no, Ian lives in Memphis. That's a whole different issue. Or Ian lives in Tucson. That's a whole different issue.
I've just thrown all of Josh's brothers under the bus today.
Oh, we're getting there.
I know that there's two I haven't mentioned yet, so I'll let you call them out. They're the two I haven't really met, so.
Oh, I'll meditate on that one.
Okay.
I feel like I had something else, but my brain has been totally derailed by that. Oh, you were going to define terms.
Oh, yeah, I was going to define terms.
That's where this whole freaking conversation started. You were going to define terms because you called me a geek and you're a nerd.
That's right. So, a nerd is somebody that spends an obsessive amount of time on specific subjects. Things like, within the Lutheran world, theology, like our understanding of God and the world. You can be a nerd about Lord of the Rings. You can be a nerd about baseball statistics. You can be a nerd about quilting. I think my wife, I could call a crocheting nerd or budding crocheting nerd.
The essence of nerddom is being way more interested in something than the average person.
Yes. I think I could probably safely call you and your wife fitness nerds. It's like the most antithetical nerd title ever, but you guys know more about
progressive overload, ladies and gentlemen.
You guys know more about physical fitness and strength training and all that kind of stuff than I will ever care to know, honestly. And then geek, on the other hand, is just a wealth of technical knowledge. And Josh, between having, a computer science minor, an education major, just being like
a mathematics major. If we're going to list things, let's.
Yeah. I have a major
all from Vanderbilt University.
Yeah, I have a major.
Which at the time was ranked, when I graduated Vanderbilt, it was the 17th highest ranked school in the country.
And an Ed.D. Let's throw that in there too.
Yeah, I finished that. Actually, I got my dissertation. It's sitting on my bookshelf now, and I don't know if it's ever going to be opened again.
Proud of you.
But it's there.
Proud of you.
I'm not happy with how they print. They printed it one-sided. Who prints a book one-sided?
Heathens.
Monsters.
Absolutely, yeah. To be fair to me, though, I have a degree in civil engineering. Do I remember much or any of it? Not really. Like,
I hope you know Ian is almost definitely going to take points away from you for saying that you have a degree in civil engineering.
Ian, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't want to actually be one.
He feels fine. He just thinks you should feel bad.
Anyone
who's my brother's name is Ian, and he is a mechanical engineer, and he has strong feelings about civil engineers.
This is most certainly true. We also happened to go to school at the same time, at the same place. So
I didn't know each other, I think, right?
No, I knew of him. We'd met a few times, but
There goes
Yeah.
the guy who's really mad about the state of the robotics lab.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were the part of the problem, the civil engineer. I think honestly, his hatred of civil engineers comes down to the fact that the student projects lab was like dominated by our stuff because it was just so much larger. So
I could see that. I could see that being enough for him to dismiss the entire field. Yes.
yeah, your
Ian, let
brother,
us know. Let us know in the comments.
he is something of a nerd for pettiness.
No, it's just you.
My point exactly.
All right. We haven't been on topic for like 5 minutes, so I think we can probably wrap this up with some empty netters.
Let's be honest though, this is probably everybody's favorite part of the episode.
I think so. Although I did at one point, I asked a Facebook, like a communicators Facebook group I was in, like, do you guys have anything that you look for in quality podcasts? This was much earlier on when I still cared a little bit about what other people thought about the podcast. No, that's not true. That was never the case. But there was one lady who had very strong feelings. She's like, I'm just there for the information. You tell one personal story and I'm out. I'm like, I feel like you are the only one. But there are, I guess, people out there who hated the last 5 minutes of this podcast. Sorry, guys.
Sorry about you.
We're not going to change, but sorry.
No. Part of the beauty of this podcast is that we get to just be human with you guys for a little bit and like explore some of the challenges that it is that we face as being Christians, and also have a little fun with it too. Because like faith doesn't have to be boring and rigid.
Yeah. Well, and the vibe we're going for is like if you're just hanging out at the bar talking about stuff with your friend who just happens to be a pastor and have that additional theological background to actually over the conversation. So
Actually,
oh jeez. So what's your empty netter, Ben? What's your last?
I actually
point
have
you
one
want
other
to bring?
topic that we were going to talk about with this before we get to that, but I'll make it quick. So the last thing that we wanted to touch on with this is the ways that this goes wrong. And there are ways in which like our confessional identity can go wrong. And it's much the same as when we talked about scripture and talked about the Bible. And that is, you can start to treat a specific interpretation of the confessions in a legalistic way, where you look at a specific article within the Augsburg Confession, or you look at Luther's phrasing of things in the smaller large catechism and say, well, this means you have to do things this way. And to which I respond, most Lutheran churches didn't have an organ in them until the 1800s. So buzz off. Like, to be Lutheran is to hold to the heart of the confession, not to hold to like a specific interpretation based in a certain time in a certain place. Lutheranism is about like understanding the grace of Christ and how it plays out in scripture. And if your focus is not on that, but on the specific practice and like traditions of the Lutheran Church in a certain place and time, you've missed the plot.
Well, and it's similar to our conversation last week about politics. Is your preference for ministry or church shaping how you interpret the confessions, just like scripture, or are you letting the theology and the confessions shape your practice?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a question that you have to be honest with yourself on. And similarly, there are also folks, I saw some of this at our district convention actually this last summer in the Texas district convention, who are almost proof texting the confession. Like you take 2 sentences out of a paragraph because they agree with the point you're making, but you forget the rest of the paragraph where it kind of balances that a little bit. And for anyone who's listening to this and is like knows the conversation, it was a conversation, frankly, about worship and worship style. And before you get up in arms, both sides did it. Sides that wanted to make sure Lutheran identity was defined with flexibility for worship style.
Yeah.
Left off the part that said like it's good to have traditions, and the side that wants every worship style to be the same in Lutheran churches across the country, they left out the part where it's like there's some flexibility in how we practice. So like both sides just conveniently left out the part of whatever article they were referencing that called for some sort of balance there. Which isn't like that's not a faithful way to use any document, especially not scripture and especially not the confession. So it can definitely get misused. It's one of those things. If you're having a conversation about the confession, make sure you're reading the whole section and make sure you're keeping in mind the context of that section. Like what is the section actually about? So
yeah. I think I can roll this into empty netters here.
Shoot your shot, my guy.
When you're reading a section of the Confessions, make sure that you're reading it in light of what it's actually talking about, because much like Scripture, like the Confessions are trying to make the point they're trying to make. They're not necessarily trying to be, like Josh mentioned earlier, they're not intentionally trying to be like 100% scientifically accurate when they're talking about the way that God provides for our every need in daily bread. So like, don't take the fact that Luther talks about that in that way to mean that we have to believe that germs aren't a thing. Or like, I've seen somebody argue that if you want to be confessionally Lutheran, you have to be a flat earther, because Luther uses heliocentric, or what's the word? Not heliocentric, Earth-centric language to describe the motion of the planets in the universe and some of his writing. That's just no.
Cut that out.
Yeah. Keep things in context. Be gracious in your conversations.
Yeah. And I think my empty netter is just be aware that there's something cohesive and pretty holistic underlying what the Lutheran Church teaches and how we go about different things. And that is a major part of our identity, even if it isn't maybe our most explicitly publicized part. So kind of to speak directly to the theme for the season, I suppose. So with all that being said, we thank you for your time. Thank you for hanging out with us for the last 45 or whatever minutes. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We check those. And before we go, a score update. We have Jesus leading the board with infinity points. Someone tried to give him another infinity. I replied saying, I'm not dealing with the different sizes of infinity. We're just going to say infinity is infinity, even though I know mathematically that isn't true. Ben did call me a geek.
I did. For good reason. Josh is currently doing some tabulation here.
Josh, me, myself, and I'm leading the pack. I'm second in the pack behind Jesus with 66 points, which is notably significantly less than infinity. And Ben is trailing with 56 points. And then leading both of us.
Derpy still?
Is Derpy with 69 points. Nice. With that score update on the board, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters,
the first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Go in peace, serve the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of Cross-Checking, a ministry of Hope and Good Shepherd Lutheran churches, where we strive to deepen your understanding of the faith and help apply it to daily life. If this podcast is helpful to you, rate the podcast, subscribe to us on your favorite platform, and share it with others who might also gain something from it.